caring about your world, doing the next right and honorable thing. And I'll tell you, if there's anybody doing the next right and honorable thing, it is Rudy Davis. And especially when it came to the work with Dr. Dino or with Kent Hovind, I have so much respect for him and how he had never met the man but decided to go and fight for his rights. And boy, he did that. Well, there's another case he wants us to talk about today, or we want to talk about today, Schaeffer Cox. We're going to be joined by Maria Patricia, and I'm going to let him introduce her in just a few minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect time after our last 2 hours of discussion of what's wrong in this country. We need to talk about political prisoners, because it appears Schaeffer Cox is one of those people that was fighting just like us. But unfortunately, they wanted to make an example of him. So I want to thank very much Rudy Davis for joining us today. Thank you, Rudy, for joining us in the Power Hour.
Thank you, Joyce, for having me on the show today. And also, I want to thank you and your audience for your critical role in obtaining freedom for Kent Hovind. I think it is public awareness that is needed in cases like this. And, you and your audience and your awareness of that, and just, like Gideon's Army, making noise and shining light is an incredible piece to this fight. And so I appreciate that, Joyce. And unlike Kent Hovind, they've got Schaeffer Cox in a CMU prison. It stands for Communications Management Unit. So Schaeffer isn't able to get to the phone and do radio interviews, so he is dependent upon the coalition of the willing. And so, for people to speak on his behalf. And so I appreciate you letting us do that this morning, and I appreciate you letting Maria on. May we all have friends like Maria who will advocate on our behalf if we ever get stuck in a prison. So,
that is something I thought about a lot. What you are doing for Kent Hovind and what Maria is doing for Schaeffer, we all pray that there would be someone there someday for us to advocate for us. Let's talk, before we bring on Maria, let's talk about the Schaeffer Cox case. Who is he and what happened to him? Because, that he's in such a prison where he can't even do a radio show, that blows my mind, because we've had a lot of prisoners do radio shows. What is the story of Schaeffer Cox?
Amen. All right. So, when I get on the show like this, I just feel how incredibly important it is that I do a good job on behalf of Schaeffer Cox, because I do believe in my heart of heart that he is an innocent man. He is a target of a corrupt administration, and he was a rising political star in Alaska. He actually, at 24 years old, ran for a state Alaska House of Representatives, and in a three-way race acquired over 38% of the vote. If you really want to know the heart of the man, and this is how I got introduced to him through my wife. I was trying to go to sleep, and I said, I'm very tired, but she forced me to watch this video. And there's a 1 hour and 41-minute Montana video where he talks about freedom, he talks about the Constitution, he talks about the solution to the tyrannical government that we have today. And in that 1 hour and 41-minute speech, I said, I have to learn more about this young man, given this Montana speech. And if you want to see it for yourself, it's called Schaeffer Cox, The Solution Speech. And you can actually listen to him and, learn about the heart of the man as he speaks. But I believe he is a brilliant man. He's gifted with just an incredible mind, and he's able to articulate his speech. He's homeschooled. His dad attended West Point. He's climbed Mount McKinley 3 different times.
Oh, wow.
Prison. He ran his own business. He was a businessman, a successful businessman at a very early age, and he was drawing crowds in Alaska that it was just a wildfire of truth and liberty and constitutional, standing up for the Second Amendment, exposing the Federal Reserve. And he started a project called the Liberty Bell Network, where people would hit a button on their cell phone, and people would come, and they weren't to be aggressive or to intrude with any police when police would pull someone over, that the person being pulled over would simply hit a button, and people would come and film to make sure that everything was done constitutional and done right. And so that created a lot of issues up in the state of Alaska, because I guess there was some, they didn't like being held accountable, I guess. So Maria maybe could speak to that a little bit more, but he had a lot of solutions that he was implementing in Alaska, and it was really catching on. And I think he would have been a rising Liberty star, and there's no telling what he would have been today if they hadn't put him in prison for the last 6 years.
You know, the Schaeffer Cox story, the video is so inspiring. He is truly one of us. I mean, he is one of ours, and we need to be there for him now because he says it so well. And all of those speeches and all of those, all that information and articles are all in the email blast and at the Power Hour guest section. So you can just click on it and look at it there. I'm sorry, not in the email blast because we don't have an email blast today, but it'll be at the Power Hour guest section. The solution to reclaiming liberty and the federal framing of Schaeffer Cox. I hope you will all look at that because this man, he's so young, and it just the incredible story of this man. All right, introduce for us, if you would, Maria Patricia, and then we're going to let her talk about who Schaeffer Cox is.
Amen. Well, Maria Patricia is the woman that has been advocating for Schaeffer Cox since he has been incarcerated. She knew Schaeffer Cox before he was incarcerated, and she has a local Alaska perspective. And praise God, you know, the Bible, if we look in the Bible, there are many biblical men that have, Peter, Paul were thrown in prison. John the Baptist was in prison. Jeremiah was thrown in a pit. Samson was thrown in prison. Joseph was thrown in prison, right? And so many times we as Christians run away from someone when the state puts an orange jumpsuit on you or puts you in shackles and labels you a criminal. But Maria never did that. She is not a fair weather friend. She has been advocating for Schaeffer. She has helped me out tremendously in learning about the details of the case. And praise God for Maria. And
Yes.
Thank God she's on the show this morning to help us learn more about Schaeffer.
Wonderful. Maria, thank you for joining us. I really, really appreciate who you are, what you're doing, and thank you for being here today.
Morning, Joyce. Thanks very much for having us today.
Sure. All right. First of all, give us a little bit of who you are and how did you come to know Schaeffer?
Schaeffer and his wife were part of a coalition that my husband and I started back in 2008, just after the election of Barack Obama. And so we had a coalition of 8 or 9 different groups, and Schaeffer and his wife Marty wanted to start a group to figure out what the solution was, really, what we were going to be doing next in order to preserve liberty. And so Schaeffer started the Second Amendment Task Force. And, Rudy talks about me being such a great friend and this being such a dedicated effort. But really the truth is, if you're working with someone as closely as we were working together and the feds come in and start targeting your friend, and your friend is eventually tried and put in prison for the rest of his, life, or a good part of his life, it's not something that you can let go of. And so that's the situation. We were part of a coalition together and working on the Second Amendment Task Force together.
I see. What was it that inspired you to work with Schaeffer at that time, prior to his problems?
Well, actually, I was looking for leaders in the community here in Fairbanks, and he was an obvious leader. He had just run for House of Representatives, and he didn't win the election, but he sure won the hearts of most of the community in the way that he was speaking out against the Fed, about economics, about the bankers. Lots of things going on in 2008 that seemed like they were groundbreaking at that point, if you can remember. And he was one of the rising stars in Alaska. I consider him our best and brightest, and
wow,
the person with the most wherewithal in Alaska to change the direction of the country.
Well, where did he get crosswise with the government? What happened that put his life in peril, literally, by putting him in prison?
Well, if you want to go to the event in which the government decided that they should start investigating him, it was the solution speech that he gave, and that's available to watch. I would say that's probably the number one thing people ought to do, is to get to know this man's heart. Very young man, prodigy, I guess you would say, in a way. I think he was 23 when I met him, and just finished running for political office. So the solution speech, I mean, when you listen to Rudy's description of it, over the last 8 years now, I have heard so many people talk about the Constitution and so many people talking about liberty in so many different ways, and there are hundreds and hundreds, if not, I'm sure there are thousands of disparate groups of conservative-leaning Americans, people who love liberty, people who want to preserve the country, people who want to push back against what's been going on. So what makes this different? Just listen to it. And it captures your heart. He captures your heart and explains things to you, complex issues, in a way that are so simple and so accessible to people. And so that's why I think there was so much hope there. Our group, the coalition, was actually attacked during that, the Lois Lerner type scandals. We were attacked as well. But this was a young man who was able to talk to people and help people understand the problem, and come with a solution.
Okay, explain to us then what happened that got him in prison.
So after the speech, the federal government decided that they should investigate Schaeffer. And so what an investigation now means is that we will send swarms of agents. We're going to send confidential informants to kind of motivate you to do something that it's nowhere near. It's not in your mind. It's not something that you want to do. So.
Okay, we got a 4-minute break. We'll be back after this 4-minute break. Stay tuned to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley and my guests, Rudy and Maria. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Rudy, do I pause or stop?
To have a sustainable backup method to cook food
Pause
and boil
or
water.
stop?
If your current plan includes using a fuel-burning stove or cooking over an open fire,
Should I
then
pause
there's
the
a much
phone or
better
stop
way.
it?
The Minuteman Rocket Stove is a biomass-burning cooking stove that only requires small...
No, just let it go.
Okay. All right, let me talk in the meantime. What I want to say is you guys are doing a great job on the radio today. I love the Maria's introduction. I wanted to add that he explained liberty at a 4th grade level so everybody could understand it. Very similar to the presentation skills, charisma, good looks, honesty, and all those fine attributes that had Kent Hovind targeted. Very similar situation with the Kent Hovind situation because he was explaining liberty. Kent Hovind, of course, explained evolution, and I believe that's what put a target on their backs. And Joyce will be asking people what the action items are and how you can help shine light and make noise in this horrible situation here. Because anybody who speaks out for the truth, you know that it's just a matter of time, especially if Hillary gets in, we're all next. You know, they're going to round us up. And people laugh about FEMA camps. Well, what do you call the CMU? If that's not like a FEMA camp for political dissidents, I don't know what is. I don't know what else to ask. We're doing this from a hotel room right now, and the sound and quality is crystal clear. I think it's great. This is God working with us. Last night and yesterday we had fantastic meetings on these topics, and we got a lot of great ideas about how to shine light and make noise, and you better expect to hear a lot of it. What I request right now is a lot of people to pray about this, because hopefully Rudy will get a chance to talk about how prayer affected the Kent Hovind case, so much so that a $10 million federal courthouse was infested with $30 million worth of mold to fix it. So prayer is the nerve that moves the muscle of God. That's our pastor Stefan Broden's favorite saying. And I also love the way he says, you know, in these perilous times and how tough they are, the only way to get through it is to see life and the political situations through the grid of your faith. And he holds up his fingers like the grid of your faith. You know, you got to see through that to survive this pure insanity and Twilight Zone nonsense down here in this crazy world. I'm just trying to fill dead air here. But we're in Sin City, and man, oh man, if this isn't like Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't know what is. It's absolute pure insanity. You know, they have legal prostitution down here. So you can go in and get a prostitute at the Bunny Ranch, no problem. But, you know, if you talk about liberty, whoa, look out, you're going to jail. Poor Schaeffer, sitting in jail. What a travesty. We appreciate all your feedback in the comments section. We try to read it, but there's just, you know, like 8,000 videos to try and keep up with comment sections. We appreciate your prayers and your tips, people. Thank you.
Welcome back to Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. We're talking to Schaeffer. We're talking about Schaeffer Cox today, a man who I know we wish we could all meet and wish we had met. He lived in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, and was quite an outstanding, what I would call, patriotic citizen and a lover of the truth. And unfortunately, he was taken to prison. We're going to find out why. We're talking with, though, Rudy and Maria, who are telling us who he is. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what Scripture says we're supposed to do. Just like what Rudy did with Kent Hovind, Dr. Kent Hovind, is he was there for him. And had he not been there for him, I mean, he was very kind to thank the Power Hour, but I think that, you know, we give God the credit, but also the incredible work that Rudy did is just unbelievable. Rudy Davis is a hero, I think, for the amount of work that he did, and we need to all pay attention to these lives that have been taken away and how we can support them and what we can do. And I'm just long for the day, like we did with Ken Hovind, that we can have Schaeffer Cox on the show. I was talking to Maria Patricia. She knew him before. She and her husband were involved with he and his wife, and so he had done this speech that was very, very powerful. Who did he give that speech to, Maria?
It was a Tea Party group in Montana.
How did it get so much attention that the government, I mean, I'm on the air every day, and they haven't bothered me. What was the reason that he got all this attention?
It may have just been that it was right along the time that the U.S. government decided, if you remember, Department of Homeland Security had put out a report about the next terrorist threat being patriotic people, being people who believe in the Second Amendment and limited government and pro-life issues. It was a DHS report that said these are the people that we're gonna take down. And so right along that time he was identified, and I don't know, I can't really tell you why that speech was particularly notable as far as getting the attention of the federal government, other than I think that Tea Party groups were just being watched in general.
I see. So bring us now to the point where, what was he found guilty of that led him to prison?
He was found guilty basically of conspiracy charges. Conspiracy to possess unregistered silencers, destructive devices, things like that. So these confidential informants that came in and started fomenting, you know, these just basically trumped up charges, ended up in what we call bootstrapping. In other words, if you are a gun owner and you associate with other people, you can be some kind of trumped up charge can be contrived against you. So because in conspiracy, the basis of conspiracy, one of the elements of a conspiracy charge is that you've talked to friends about the government and you've taken a step to advance some kind of a plan. And so it's just that vague, actually that vague. We are going to send people out there to talk to you about things, and once you talk about things, we can bootstrap your gun ownership together with these talks, these chats you've had with your friends. And especially if you're under federal investigation, we've taped these things. We the FBI, have all this information on you, so we can use these recordings that we have to prove that you talked to friends about these things.
I see. Now there's an article called "Federal Setup: The Conspiracy to Entrap Schaeffer Cox," and let's see. It has been reported that out of the hundreds of hours of audio recorded by the FBI during the lengthy investigation into Cox, the jury received only 5 hours, but only got to hear around 90 minutes of it. 90 minutes of cherry-picked sound bites that could sway a jury. Of course, the exculpatory audio, some of which has been preserved, was all disallowed.
Exactly right. And his public defender now has had experience here in Alaska with the Ted Stevens case. Ted Stevens and 3 legislators here were convicted and put into prison for trumped-up charges against Ted Stevens, as we all know. This public defender, Michael Filipovich, out of Seattle, Washington, is now Schaeffer's public defender.
Okay, we got to go to a break. We've got another 3-minute break. We'll be back with Rudy Davis and Maria Patricia. Stay tuned to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley. 3-minute break.
3 minutes, wow. Hey, Rudy, you don't have your Skype on?
No.
Thank you for listening to GCN. Be sure to visit GCNlive.com today.
The way we run these interviews is I usually Skype Rudy. I listen in another room and record, and I'm surprised she doesn't have the email blast going out today. And let me recommend a little commercial here for everyone. Joyce Riley and her crew, Catherine is one of them, puts together an amazing email every single day that has the lists and links for all the guests she has on. Normally she does a 1-hour news report in the morning and goes over current events, and then she'll have open calls and gives everybody an opportunity to discuss whatever they want, and they don't censor or, you know the word, they don't screen out a lot of calls. And so you get on the radio, and she has callers calling from all over the world. She really encourages people to call from all over the world. She's setting up a new international toll-free line because she wants to hear from people on the other side of the planet. And no, we don't believe in flat earth, if that rumor is going around. But anyways, she's got a great show. She doesn't scream and holler like some of the other radio guests on the alternative news networks. She's got a lot of stuff on health, which is obviously the most important. She is a Christian, and her email blast has links to her store where, of course, she sells mainly health products, but some of the best books that you can find, including that, I think that Sandy Hook book that you can't even buy on Amazon. And we really support Joyce Riley. We buy a lot of our products there. I personally really highly recommend the selenium and the probiotics. And now the Strauss Heart Drops are highly recommended by anybody who has heart problems. I haven't tried it, and I'm not saying they cure anything, but I can tell you that they have really high reviews for the Strauss Heart Drops. I think it's for people who have high blood pressure. Anyway, and the Vitamir toothpaste, yum, yum. And of course, she's really supported us a lot with the fluoride fight here in Dallas. Well, I'm not in Dallas right now, but in Dallas we've had Regina and Bergia fighting the fluoride battle really hard with City Council. So much so that she even had I think a lawsuit filed against the people who voted to keep the poison in the water. We're not asking them to take the fluoride out of the water because that's nearly impossible. But we're asking them to save millions of dollars from adding hydrofluorosilicic acid to our water. And Joyce has been a real help in getting the word out on that fight and battle, because that's why people have no empathy for people who are in jail.
You know, we have all said things about how we feel about whether it is the government or the people that run the government or control the government or whatever. And to think that Schaeffer Cox, who was such a bright, or is such a bright young man, came to under the microscope of the agencies that don't appreciate what we're attempting to do. And I think this may change if Donald Trump becomes the president. I really do. And I'm hoping that it will be a short time before Schaeffer is released. We're talking today to Rudy Davis and Maria Patricia, who are fighting to get him from prison. Now, there were trumped-up charges. Of course, everybody says that. I don't know. And I'm not familiar enough with the case. And perhaps let me go back to Rudy here for a second. Rudy, what more do you know about his situation of being convicted and going to prison that we need to know?
You bet, Joyce. Let me share this. It's really difficult to understand the Schaeffer Cox case without understanding what happened to Senator Ted Stevens, who was the longest-running United States Republican senator in our history as a country. I think he served from 1968 to 2009, if I'm not mistaken. There's 2 books written on Senator Ted Stevens, and I'm not associated with the authors, but I've read both books, and I think it's incredibly important that people take the time to completely understand what happened to Senator Ted Stevens. The first book is called Not Guilty: The Unlawful Prosecution of United States Senator Ted Stevens by Rob Carey. The second book is License to Lie: Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice by Sidney Powell. Rob Carey makes the point in his book that if they can do this to a United States senator, they can do this to anybody. There was incredible corruption at the FBI. There was incredible corruption within the Department of Justice. It was the Office of Public Integrity, and that was laid bare for everyone to see in this book. Judge Emmett Sullivan, who was the judge in Senator Ted Stevens' case, appointed a special prosecutor, Hank Schulke, to investigate the prosecutors that were going after Senator Ted Stevens. Keep in mind, when Senator Ted Stevens lost his re-election because of all of these bogus charges that were brought against him, and there was a child pedophile that the government used to turn to basically create fabricated evidence against Senator Ted Stevens. And when Hank Schulke did a special prosecution, it was a 525-page report called the Schulke Report. One of the prosecutors, whose name is Nick Marsh, and I don't wish that anybody would commit suicide, but he did commit suicide when the limelight came back on him. This is written about in the book, and it's well documented. These prosecutors, I could name them off by name, Brenda Morris and Joseph Bottini. Joseph Bottini is the same prosecutor that went after Schaeffer Cox. In that report and in this book, they are identified or exposed as withholding exculpatory evidence, manufacturing testimony, manipulating witnesses, where they flew in witnesses to Washington, D.C. When they found out the witnesses were not giving anything favorable to the prosecution, they said the witness must be sick, and when they sent him back to Alaska, before the defense team got a chance to question him, there was a FBI whistleblower named Chad Joy, who is called the Chad Joy whistleblower complaint, and he was exposing all of this from inside the FBI, and they ran Chad Joy out of the FBI. And you can't understand the case of Schaeffer Cox without understanding how absolute corrupt the FBI and the Department of Justice can be on a case like this. And I know it may sound shocking, but that's why I'm asking people to read those books and to understand for yourself incredibly how bad that it is. And
what is the bottom line story of what happened to Ted Stevens?
Okay, Senator Ted Stevens, like I said, he was the longest-running United States senator and Republican senator in United States history. He would have stopped Obamacare. What they said is that he accepted a gift from Bill Allen. Bill Allen was a company leader or a company CEO of a $300 million Vico oil business. Bill Allen was accused of having sex with underage girls, which, oh, by the way, Schaeffer Cox was exposing that. Bambi Tyree was one of the 15-year-olds a pedophilia ring in Alaska, and Schaeffer Cox was helping to expose that. Bill Allen testified in court that Senator Ted Stevens inappropriately received a gift of renovation of his cabin up in Alaska, and that he didn't disclose that gift properly in the Senate. Everybody knows that Senator Ted Stevens paid $160,000 for those renovations. They were reported not to be more than $80,000, but the government was trumping this up in order to bring charges because they considered bringing down Senator Ted Stevens more important than exposing an accused child pedophile. Now, Senator Dan Sullivan, who's senator now, if you go to YouTube and search Dan Sullivan, Bill Allen, he does a press conference with KTVA, which is a local Alaskan channel, and he talks about how the Alaskan people are incredibly upset about what the Department of Justice did in bypassing someone who had abused a child, right, an underage girl, to go after a senator who was proven not guilty. There is nothing wrong with what Senator Ted Stevens did, and whether you agree with his policies or not, he is not a criminal. They went after him because they were trying to further their own career. And let me say this too, Joyce. Schaeffer often said that the Federal Reserve is the single most evil institution on this planet. He was exposing the evilness of the Federal Reserve. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And when you get a prison industrial complex, which is motivated by greed and money, and when you get Department of Justice, Office of Public Integrity, and when you get the FBI, and they're motivated to capture terrorists, and they get promoted by capturing terrorists, everyone all of a sudden becomes a terrorist. If you heard what if you noted what Maria said earlier, the MIAC report came out, I think, in the 2009-2011 time frame, and they said anybody with a Ron Paul bumper sticker, anybody who stands up for the Second Amendment, anybody who talks about the Constitution incessantly, those are our terrorists. And they went after Schaeffer Cox. They took down the same prosecutor who took down Senator Ted Stevens for not disclosing this so-called gift from this accused pedophile, I should say. The same prosecution went after, it's called the Polar Pen Team, went after Schaeffer Cox. And so everybody in Alaska knows that, Senator Ted Stevens was innocent of those charges, and the Department of Justice did a complete overreach of their powers and totally misguided attack upon Senator Ted Stevens. But everybody forgets about the son of a Baptist minister, Schaeffer Cox, because he didn't have the fancy lawyer team that Senator Ted Stevens has. So Schaeffer Cox is sitting and rotting in jail. I believe that. I don't know if you've ever heard of it's called the Milgram Conformity Experiment, and there's also called the Ash Conformity Experiment. They spent over $25 million to go after Schaeffer Cox, and he's just an individual in Alaska who's talking about liberty. Mm-hmm. When Maria talks about these government informants that went in, they were provoking him and they were prodding him to violence repeatedly. I have that on audio, and we put up over nearly 600 videos of some of the discovery evidence of these informants prodding Schaeffer Cox to violence. And when these in the Bundy case, there was 14 government informants and only 6 real people, right? They're manipulating people on a massive scale because they're paying these government informants to go in and provoke violence. And let me say this too, Schaeffer Cox spoke in a very bold way, the way our founders did. Our founders if our founders came back and Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be fertilized from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said, I would rather live in dangerous freedom than peaceful slavery. Our own Declaration of Independence, after a long train of abuses, it is not only our right, it is our duty to throw off such tyranny and install new stewards of government. So Schaeffer Cox spoke that way. It doesn't mean that he was a mass murderer planning to kill anybody. He was brought up on charges of conspiracy to commit murder. He was not a murderer. He did not plan to murder anybody, but he was being provoked by government agents. Some of these government agents were running drugs for Hell's Angels. I'm not exaggerating. They had their own life sentences, and so they were being paid. The government agent testified in trial that he expected to get paid $300,000 for the work that he did in being an undercover agent in Schaeffer Cox's own kitchen, sitting around his own kitchen table. It's horrific. And let me say this, I got so much, Joyce, but Michael Reagan, the son of Ronald Reagan, was on his radio show, and he called for the death of Mark Dice. Do you know why he called for the death of Mark Dice on
wait a minute. Was on whose show? Schaeffer?
Michael Reagan has a radio show. He's the son of Ronald Reagan.
Right.
Okay. Mark Dice is a YouTuber, and he's a 9/11 truther.
Right.
Mark Dice was mailing 9/11 truth pamphlets to the military overseas, trying to enlighten them about what's going on with 9/11 truth, and that the story we've been told about 9/11 is not true. When Michael Reagan found that out, he called for the death of Mark Dice on his show and called him a traitor and said he should be shot. It was
wow.
and not only that, but Bob Beckel, a Fox News commentator, called for the death of Julian Assange because he considered Julian Assange a traitor. And I'm going to be attending a trial tomorrow, Joyce, of a man. He's a 24-year-old young man. His name is Bryce Matthew Quellar. On YouTube, he goes by Fisher of Men. Bryce had a YouTube channel with over 100 million views on his combined YouTube channels. He has several channels. He put out truth about Sandy Hook. He put out truth about false flags in the media. He put out a lot of videos that were getting a lot of attention. Now, Bryce Matthew Quellar had no money. He wasn't making any money off his YouTube channel. And he got in front of the camera, and I'm not saying this is the best Christian behavior. I'm not defending what he did as saying it's right. But he said that he would use his rifle in a manner in which the founding fathers intended, and his wife had just had a miscarriage, and his house had burned down. Okay, so but within 30 minutes after he made that YouTube video, they came and arrested him. He did not put up any resistance. He did not threaten anybody. I'm going to be attending his sentencing tomorrow, where they threatened him with 20 years in prison for a YouTube video. Ozzy Osbourne bites the head off a bat, and we don't put him in prison. And he didn't threaten anybody specifically. He was calling out traitors in government, nor has he had any history of violent history of breaking the law. Pete Santilli I visited as well, and he said to say hi, and he would love to talk to you. And we've had a wonderful victory in the Bundys, and I've met Michelle Fiore as well, which is the Nevada Assemblywoman. But this thing is horrific, Joyce, and it's being funded by paid government informants that are going in and provoking violence in our patriot community. Most of the militias have been infiltrated by huge numbers of government informants that are being paid.
Wow. I mean, all I can say is, wow, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible what we're hearing and seeing here. Listeners, do you have any idea what this means? If it could be you. It could be me. I cannot imagine that that Schaeffer Cox has done said any more than I have done, or Alex Jones, or, any of the people who do radio shows. I can't even imagine I don't know. I'm just in awe of this.
It is overwhelming, Joyce, and that's why it's important to take time to read those two books, because you have to understand the depth of corruption, and because the Department of Justice and the FBI is motivated and they're incentivized to go capture terrorists, right? When Schaeffer's prosecutors, when they convicted him, Eric Holder took him out to a steak dinner and lifted them up about it. Thank you for the wonderful job that you did of protecting America from this terrible domestic terror. You got to be kidding me, Joyce. Schaeffer Cox, he told one of the government informants who cussed like a sailor. This government informant, we have him on audio, and every word is, just horrific cussing. And Schaeffer Cox says, Bill, I've never even punched anybody in the nose, and I don't want to start now. And this government informant held a knife to Schaeffer Cox's friend's throat and said, "Where is the plan? We need this plan." He was described on the witness stand as a fat, rude drunkard, and he was getting paid money, to record Schaeffer Cox. And we have evidence that they recorded meetings that when the recordings were brought to the prosecutors, they said, "Oh, we don't want to use this because it shows that Schaeffer Cox was not aligned with performing any violence." So they asked Bill Fulton to throw the recording away. And Schaeffer says, on that recording, it would have shown that I rejected any of their proddings to violence. It's absolutely horrific what's going on, and the more that I see of it, it's like, oh my goodness. And the answer to this, Joyce, is not only to pray and to look to the Lord Jesus Christ, that we've got that, but we've got to speak up. Christians cannot abandon our brothers in bonds, and we have to educate ourselves. It really is important to educate ourselves about how the government is overreaching, their mandate, for law enforcement.
Yeah. Without a doubt. All right, we're at 47 after the hour. We're going to take a break at 50, and then we've just got to the top of the hour. So let's bring this to the point of what can we do for Schaeffer Cox? What needs to be done? What is the sentence what were the charges that he was sentenced on?
Maria, did you want to take that, or I can take it?
Go ahead, Rudy.
Okay.
And then I do want to bring out a couple of points.
Okay.
Conspiracy to murder federal officials, if you can believe it or not. That is absolutely not true. Conspiracy to possess unregistered firearms. he put a water hose on the end of his gun and filled it with shaving cream. That was one of the unregistered devices that they said that he had. He had these dummy grenades, and he had some black powder in another part of his garage. He had a tube of JB Weld. He had never used a grenade. There was no evidence of him ever wanting to to use live grenades. He had never done that. And they said, well, you can put all these pieces together and you can formulate a live grenade. And they did a video in front of the jury of this live grenade going off and blowing up these mannequins, and said, isn't this horrific? And it's like, you got to be kidding me. Schaeffer Cox didn't even have a live grenade. He had a dummy grenade. Every redneck in Texas, including myself, has 3 or 4 of them in our garage that we buy in Army Navy stores. It's not evidence that he wanted to go blow up anybody. And the charges that they brought against him, he really thought he's answered these questions. He's answered the questions regarding the weapons charges and the conspiracy to commit murder of federal officials. And we have all of the evidence in the world that proves he's innocent, Joyce. I mean, it'll take a lot longer than an hour, but I guarantee you that if somebody wants to look deep in this case, the deeper they look, when the truth gets out, so will Schaeffer.
Well, we'll have you back on again, and we'll follow this case then as soon as we can all get educated on it more, because this is new to everyone. The man's name is new to us down here in the lower 48, and we haven't been aware of this story. So thanks to you, both of you, for bringing it to our attention. Now, how many years was he sentenced to?
26 years.
Whoa! All right,
and that's more than he more than his age at the time. Do you mind if I just bring out something?
Please. We only have about a minute here, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Very quickly. You asked a question about, everybody says that they're innocent and their case was bootstrapped. This is Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. He says that the importance of this case is critical for the whole of humanity. If someone doesn't think the way the federal government wants them to or challenge the policies, the person is considered a threat. It's thought crime. This is 1984 style thought crime. And also very quickly, Hillary Clinton said on a tour of her book, Hard Choices, we can't let a minority of the people, and that's what it is, it's a minority, we can't let them hold a viewpoint that terrorizes the rest of the population. So this is really what it's about. If you believe in the Second Amendment, the Constitution, the founding of the country, we can't allow you to just be part of the general population.
Oh, my goodness. What is his spirit like? What is he doing in prison now, Maria?
Oh, he's writing a tremendous amount. It's incredible, the abuses that he's gone through and the writing that he's still doing. You can look at some of that writing also on his website, freeschaeffercox.com, and just kind of get a feel for the kinds of things he's capable of producing. It's amazing. Okay.
It's Free Schaeffer Cox, SCHAEFFER, freeschaeffercox.com. We'll be back after this 3-minute break. Final segment coming up with Rudy Davis and Maria Patricia. We'll be right back. Joyce Riley here.
Wonderful, guys. Great work. The only thing I'd add is that he's quoted in these undercover FBI sting audio clips saying that he would do a Gandhi, not a Rambo, if he was apprehended. And he says that we don't need to take them down. Their lies and deceit and corruption will take themselves down, and they don't need our help because eventually it'll fall on its own. And today's news, if it's not falling in on its own today, I don't know what it'll take. So we'll keep listening. I think there's a minute left. They're going to wrap it up. And again, we want to thank the Power Hour listeners for all their prayers, because I don't think they covered this, but last time we all prayed in the Kent Hovind case, the $10 million courtroom, or courthouse, the brand new one, where the judge was coming down hard on Kent Hovind for mailing a letter and wanted to throw another 20 years at him. That courthouse, after all those prayers, so you'll know, has become infested, like the next week or two afterwards, became infested with $30 million worth of black mold. And they had to move out of the building, I think permanently. I don't even think they're in that courthouse anymore. They're in the old courthouse right across the street. And
The time to protect yourself is now. The solution.
prayers work.
EMF radiation emitted from cell phones, tablets, and laptops. Right now at DefenderShield.com.
Today, just for an update, today Kent Hovind is building Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. For anybody who wants to go out and learn more about creation science and evangelism, and meet Kent Hovind, and you can be baptized there in the water, and you can get married there in his beautiful gazebo. You can look up his pictures of his own remarriage there in Lenox, Alabama. It's a beautiful place. He also has a lot of camping facilities, so if you want to take a camper and stay there, you can do that. I know he's looking for people all the time who like building things, engineers, plumbers, electricians, people who are into gardening, organic gardening. I know they're going to start building beautiful gardens there too to grow good food. And they do Bible study every night. And if you want, you can tune into his Kent Hovind official YouTube channel and you can see his Bible study every night. He answers questions.
Welcome back to the Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. Now, the website, freeschaeffercox.com, and that's ShaefferSchaeffer, SchaefferFer, freeschaeffercox.com. If you go there, it'll show you where you can write to him and where you can send money, orders for paper and stamps. And I would encourage you to do that. Also, you can donate to his cause. Now, that's something we haven't talked about, and we need to have these people back on again. We need to have Maria and Rudy back on again so that we can learn more about this political prisoner. I am saddened to hear his story and to know that there's probably many more like him there that don't have these wonderful people like Maria and Rudy behind them. So you can donate, and what is needed for donation? Is there an appeal? What is happening in his case? Because obviously 26 years is absolutely ridiculous.
Right now we're on direct appeal, and that would be the very first appeal that's due after the trial. So, and he's allowed to appeal things that happened at the trial. So, this public defender is going to appeal Brady violations, and that's just where they haven't allowed the jury to hear the evidence that would exonerate him. And so that's happening. He does have a public defender. The thing that funds are needed for is an investigator, because there's so much material in this case. You can tell we have to speak very, very rapidly, and there's so many issues to go into. So it's really to hire somebody that can be an investigator and go through some of the issues.
I see. Was Sheriff Mack involved in this case at all?
He has not been yet, but Schaeffer and Sheriff Mack spoke at the same conference at one point, and so Sheriff Mack is aware of it. And people could get a hold of him and ask him to get involved, and that would be a huge help as well.
Well, I really don't want to bombard him with phone calls, but I'll tell you what, I will call Sheriff Mack, and to keep him from getting 1,000 phone calls that he doesn't need to get right now. Trust me, I will call Richard and talk with him about this. Not that I'm any more important than anybody else, but maybe just one phone call will do more rather than others. Okay, is there anything else you want to add before I go back to final comments from Rudy?
No, go ahead. Well,
okay.
I think there really is just a simple way to remember Schaeffer's name. He was named after Francis Schaeffer Cox, and that's actually his name. I think the most important thing people can do is just remember his name and tell people about it. And you're exactly right. There are lots of political prisoners, and I think Schaeffer is just going to expose that. So if people could just learn his name, go to his website, and learn as much as they can about it, that would be helpful.
I appreciate what you are doing, and want to keep up on this case, because we really need to support him in any way we can. Now, you could write a letter to him. That would be an awesome thing. Probably he could probably like to have letters, whatever that we can provide for him. Now, on the issue of sending things to prisoners, what do we need to know about that, Rudy?
Well, you can't send anything with staples, Joyce. You can't send like tracts. I mean, I think it has to be normal 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, maybe not more than 14 in an envelope. I think the rules differ per prison, but I've been pretty successful in getting letters to Schaeffer, maybe 14 pages per letter. 14 pages per envelope. So I do encourage, like you said, to write Schaeffer a letter, either an encouraging letter or
Yes.
a question. He totally will. He's been very
Yes.
responsive. But
Wonderful.
now that he's back in the CMU, Joyce, I don't know how responsive he will be because we were getting some traction. And
we're out of time, unfortunately. I am so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Rudy. You have no idea how much respect I have for you. You are so articulate, and you are so such an asset to all of these people that need your help. Thank you very much. And to you, Maria, boy, we all wish we had a friend like you, Maria. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us in the Power Hour today. Remember, freeschaeffercox.com. It's all about the truth. If I'm not here tomorrow, everything is cool. Everything will go on. Have a blessed day. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, love you all. We'll see you at the...
Did you guys cover the power or the CMUs?
We just ran out of time. There were so many topics to cover. It's so hard to cover and with the commercial breaks. But praise God for Joyce that she allowed us to cover that topic for a whole hour. But there's just so much to cover. It's really, really hard to fit it in the time.
The CMUs.
And I was going to say to write to Karen Loeffler. Right? And
but she said she'll have you back on.
We'll wait. But praise God that we were able to get as much out as we did.
I thought it was great. The only thing missed was the Rambo not...
Yeah, I wanted to say that. I was planning on saying that at the very end, but the time ran out. So thank God for Joyce Riley that allows us to get the story out. And there's so many more political prisoners that need to be talked about as well. And we really do have to take action. Otherwise, these men are going to rot in hellholes. And, we really do have to become aware and speak up. Otherwise, it's going to be us next.
Here's the feedback from Maria. She says, good show. I think this will really help people get interested. And that's a coup that Joyce is going to call Sheriff Mack herself. That's a coup?
A coup. It's like a good thing, right?
Oh, a good thing that Joyce is going to... Yeah, Joyce and Sheriff Mack are close friends. And Sheriff Mack's constitutional sheriffs are one of the only real organizations that she supports financially. She really recommends them, so that's how highly she thinks of Sheriff Mack's organization. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for your prayers, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Watch out for all those devils out there. There's too many to count. Bye.
Bye-bye.